Assalamualaikum and a very good day to Dr. Izran and Dr. Fitria. Today, I, Ahmad Luman Hakim, as supervised by Dr. Farin Ain, will be presenting on my undergraduate project titled The Impact of COVID-19 on the Curve Shopping Mall. To start off with the research background, in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic struck worldwide and caused impacts towards all industries, including shopping malls. The government imposed a lockdown known as the Movement Control Order or MCO, which halted the movements of Malaysians along with several other strict restrictions in order to curb the spread of COVID-19. Evidently, restrictions have definitely changed the retail landscape in Malaysia and overall people's desire to purchase goods and services in physical stores. According to Rahim & Co.'s property market report in 2021, the retail industry in Petaling Jaya was significantly affected by the wave of COVID-19 that was and still is plunging the country, as most of the businesses were classified as non-essential and the temporary cease of leisure and tourism sector definitely impacted the industry as a whole. Movement restrictions and temporary periods of market activity closures saw retail malls and businesses running at minimal capacity, for some outright closure for several months. Generally, Petaling Jaya as part of the Klang Valley relies on both the local and international visitors to grace its retail establishments. Periods of dead or low foot traffic became common, more so with less popular malls. Even when MCO was lifted, people remained cautious and avoided crowded places. Additionally, visitors on weekdays still saw tremendous decline as most people are working from home rather than the office. While there have been promising crowd sizes on weekends, sales remain low as wallets were strung tight amidst job losses and pay cuts. There are a few problem statements in this case study. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to escalate, some countries have managed to slowly enter the recovery phase. Malaysia itself have eased several restrictions and have progressed well in recent times. One question that remains intact for most businesses is that when it is possible for them to operate as usual, this includes operating at their usual business hours and not limiting the number of visitors on their premises. Evidently, the Malaysian government made several U-turns and the transition for each phase of MCO was too lengthy and unpredictable, which was very bad for business and halted operations of most tenants. According to a study in 2020, tenant sales were at an all-time low at an average drop of 90% in Malaysia, and paying rent, wages, and etc. were becoming a struggle. We may now observe safety procedures being enforced in every offline retail establishment, such as physical distancing signage, guards stationed at every entrance and exits, hand sanitizers being provided, and also a limited number of people allowed into a store, and also information collected through MySejahtera or writing down manually as part of contact tracing. It has altered the way people conduct business. Businesses may have to reconsider their store architecture, fitting room operations, dining places, and counterweights due to increased space congestion. Other than that, it is also forecasted that nearly half of the worldwide consumers do not expect to return to physical stores for a long period, even when restrictions are eased. Next, there are two research questions that are brought up in this study. First of all is, what are the implications of COVID-19 towards the curve? I would like to find out the impacts by COVID-19, which for a period of time caused shopping malls to not be able to operate, and they have been a significant amount of decline in sales and foot traffic, even when they slowly open up for business again. The second one is how to overcome the implications of COVID-19 towards the curve. This is to find out the recommendations of how the responsible bodies such as government, shopping mall management, and etc. can help tenants and businesses to stay afloat and recover from the impacts of COVID-19. Furthermore, in accordance to the research questions in the previous slide, there are also two research objectives of this study. They include to investigate the impact of COVID-19 on the curve and how to overcome them. Additionally, this research is hoped to be beneficial towards several parties. The study is deemed to be significant towards 5 main categories of people. From the tenant's perspective, we can better understand their hardship during these tough times and what can be done to ease their burden. Shopping malls as a whole have been struggling due to the lack of foot traffic, and this study will highlight on what the management can do to reopen safely and encourage shoppers to fill up shopping malls once again. Besides that, investors such as REITs and others can also use this study in order to help them in making better judgment before making the right investment decision. Other than that, it will also be beneficial towards developers in the future planning on shopping malls development in terms of supply, marketing, selling price, and so forth. This study will also be significant towards the government to fully assess the situation and come up with relevant aids such as providing moratoriums, financial aids, tax benefits, and also provide good safety measures to ensure there are no need for future lockdowns. Last but not least, as a contribution to knowledge, this study will help future researchers to a deeper understanding on the impacts of COVID-19 on shopping malls. In addition, the literature review outline of the study consists of finding any definition or terms regarding COVID-19 and shopping malls. Besides that, I also need to identify in detail the pandemic restrictions and its impacts. After that, as MCO is one of the main barriers implemented due to COVID-19, the study needs to fully understand the timeline and policies imposed by the Malaysian government. Moving along is the most key criteria to this research, which is to know what are the impacts of COVID-19 towards shopping malls and to identify the recommendations to aid the impacts. Therefore, there are various factors that affect a property's performance during the COVID-19 pandemic. There are also no exception for a shopping mall, which is a commercial property which heavily relies on consumers and businesses. Several factors that impact the performance of a shopping mall have been identified to find out their influence on these properties during the pandemic period. The factors include rental, occupancy, e-commerce, consumer behavior, government policy, consumer confidence, foot traffic, tenant mix, supply chain distribution, and also retail sales. Moreover, this is the research methodology that will be carried out to fulfill this study. The first stage is preliminary investigations. During this stage, the research has been proposed to figure out the problem statements and objectives. Literature review has been done during this stage to achieve better understanding of the research title. After that is data collection, in where I will be interviewing suitable candidates to strengthen my literature review findings. Next is data analysis, in which the results obtained is interpreted to achieve research objectives by using Microsoft Excel and content analysis. Finally, the last stage is when the researcher gives a conclusion and recommendation regarding the research title. Hence, to answer the research questions and achieve the research objectives, this study will rely solely on the interview method, which is a qualitative outcome. The location of my thesis case study is the Curve Shopping Mall. The Curve is Malaysia's first pedestrianized shopping mall with a fabulous blend of food and retail outlets. Its unique appeal is in its distinctive ambience, refined by its wide canopied walkways and its al fresco dining area. It is a 3-story mall with a total of 250 outlets, comprising of 650,000 square feet of net lettable space. Nestled in the heart of Mutiara Damansara, the Curve is accessible via 5 major highways, namely the North Klang Valley Expressway, NKVE, Lebuh Damansara Puchong, LDP, Lebuh Sprint, Penchala and also the newly opened Damansara Shah Alam Elevated Expressway Dash. For the interview, I have chosen 3 candidates from the Curve Shopping Management, which include the General Manager, Leasing Manager, and also Senior Leasing Executive, and also 2 property analysts from CBRE WTW, which include the Director and Senior Assistant Manager for Research and Consultancy. Their range of experience was set at a minimum of 5 years. Overall, the interview consisted of 17 questions, which included the background of respondent, data collection, solution, and also recommendations. One of the most important questions was what was the implications of COVID-19 towards the Curve. The answers received included drop in footfall, drop in tenant sales, not able to recoup revenue, difficulty in obtaining rental, tenancy not being renewed, tight SOPs having to be imposed, and also instability of shopping habits and spending power of visitors. Next question is, were there difficulties in obtaining rent and maintenance fees? If yes, what were the steps taken to curb the problem? Overall, all the feedback received indicated difficulties in obtaining rent and maintenance fees. The steps taken to curb the problem included rental rebates, waivers, assistance on the gross tenant obligation, and also flexibility in payments and leasing terms. After that did the rise of e-commerce have a big impact on the number of visitors? It can be concluded that e-commerce only had a big impact during the earlier stages of MCO and is about the same when the sector reopened. Evidently, people still need to go to stores as they prefer to touch and try before purchasing. Some people are also impatient and don't want to wait the delivery time. It is also a Malaysian culture to go to shopping malls to socialize, enjoy the air conditioning, and also park their car safely. Moving along is how were the occupancy rates during MCO. It can be said that the Curve occupancy rates drop only slightly and is more or less the same. Occupancy rates depend on location, and for prime malls such as the Curve, they maintain a quite healthy, and tenants essentially have to oblige to the common 3-year tenancy agreement. Based on the answers received from the respondents, there are 7 implications that were mentioned by at least 2 of the respondents. Instability of shopping habits and spending powers of shoppers, drop in footfall, and difficulty of obtaining rental were the most mentioned by at least 80% of the respondents. To verify the factors affecting shopping malls based on my literature review, the interviewees were also asked to evaluate them using the Likert scale, with 1 being insignificant and 5 being severely significant. The results shown that all the factors are deemed reasonable, with rental, foot traffic, tenant mix, and retail sales being the most relevant, and occupancy, e-commerce, and supply chains distribution leaning towards the moderate level. To satisfy the second objective of this research, the content analysis brought out 8 strategies taken to overcome the implications of COVID-19, which are short-term renewals, rental rebates and assistance, hosting promotional events, providing delivery areas for merchants such as Grab and Foodpanda, handing out vouchers for gymnasiums and sports facilities, and also provide 2-hour parking with a minimum spend of 100 ringgit. Other than that, the mall management also took energy-saving initiatives to save costs, such as dimming lights at areas which people rarely visit, and close off a few secluded entrances to minimize operating costs. Based on the feedback from the respondents, there are several things that can be done to ensure that the Curve can survive another pandemic in the future. They include implementing strategies of choosing tenants from essential businesses, particularly food and beverage, as they pose less of a risk and can generate steady income and attract footfall. Besides, there is adding more niche tenants such as IMAX cinemas and specialty stores. Other than that is having a good exit strategy and improved sinking fund. Besides, proper planning in tenant mix, especially the development of Sister Mall E-Curve, and also better layout to save operating expenses. Last but not least, several references were used in the making of this final year project. They consist of mainly research papers, journals, articles, property market reports from NAPIC and property firms in Malaysia such as CBRE, WTW, Rahim & Co, and etc. and also a few websites to help solidify my findings. We have finally come to the end of the presentation, and I would like to thank everyone for lending their ears.